Hi. So I'm Bonnie. I'm coming from UC Berkeley. And like Amanda, I'm coming from a humanities perspective, so it seemed maybe good to jump off of that. I'm part of the Center for New Media. We don't have a game-specific program. We don't actually have a ton of people working on games. So that's in some ways exciting because it's a chance to really start up some games classes and a focus that's specific to Berkeley. I'm also part of comparative literature and gender and women's studies. Oh, I see I've started you at the end. 1 second, please. And in general, one of the things that I want to communicate is that we're always looking for collaborators. I'll get to more of that, but please feel free to get in touch if anything is of interest here. So my general approach is a critical cultural awareness to games. So I'm always looking at things like gender, sexuality, race, as they are core to game studies, but also game design and game education. So my background is kind of mixed. I used to be a games journalist. My focus was gender and sexuality. That means that I'm still engaged with dialogues with the games industry. Games journalism is a little bit weird. A lot of journalists jump from journalism to industry, so there are close ties there. I just came from GDC last week, so I feel lucky to be very engaged with people making mainstream games. And then I have this dedication to activism, to community development, so not just working inside the academy, but really reaching out to gameplay communities. My own research focuses mostly on queer studies and kind of alternative sexualities broadly defined in games. So I look at queer failure, I look at kinkiness, I look at how we can subvert play. I'm coming from a literature background, so I'm interested in close reading, I'm interested in feminist theory, and then I've been working with a group of scholars from across the country to put together a kind of mini field we're calling queer game studies. So we have a collection that is just now under contract with Minnesota we're really excited about, and it's a selection of first-person pieces, academic pieces, coming from across this new field that should be available to use in the classroom sometime late this year or early next year. I also teach game design and game studies, which is again a little bit rare at Berkeley. The things that are important to me are to teach accessible game design. So a lot of my students are not programmers. Our CS department is wonderful, but doesn't have a lot of diversity. So the way that we bring diversity to games at Berkeley are to welcome people who don't have a programming background. And I'd be happy to talk more about how to do that, how to bring in a more diverse audience in your programs as well. We look specifically at how to explore personal experience through game design. So I've run this workshop that we call the Queerness and Games Workshop. It's happening again in the fall, where queer identified students on campus come together, learn to build games as a way to express their experiences of queerness at Berkeley. And then the game studies work that I teach is also very critically engaged. So I teach a class on race in games, a class on sexuality in games, and those students are always making games as well as studying critical issues. So the big thing that I want to tell you about that we do each fall is the Queerness and Games Conference. This year it's going to be October 24th and 25th. That's a weekend. And it's a really special event. That sounds cheesy to say. But it's about 300 people. We take over an academic building for the weekend. It's academics, it's game devs, it's game players, and it's this kind of amazing safe space both for a queer community and for these very creative, interactive dialogues that we don't often get to have in other academic spaces. So we're always looking for people to present. We're interested in queerness, but also disability, for example, race, gender, these intersectional issues. We're looking for people to present their games. We have an arcade. Berkeley has really become, and we're very proud of this, the kind of central node within the UC for looking at these issues. So if you're interested in collaborating, some ideas. The CFP for the Queerness and Games Conference should be coming out somewhere in mid-April. I would love to talk to anybody about designing curricula that are for socially engaged game design and game studies. And I just came off of giving a talk about creating safe spaces in game education. So to me, safe space is a really important step towards fostering diversity. So if you'd like to talk about just the logistics, the nitty-gritty of how to make a classroom more encouraging for diversity in games, I would love to talk about that. So feel free to grab a card from me or reach out, and thanks for listening. Any questions? Yeah?
I'm curious whether you had any work or put any thought into making safe spaces for like computing labs for making games, sort of issues around that.
Yeah, it's not the environment that I'm used to working in, but it's an interesting one. I had a conversation with undergrads the other day where a group of them have created this club, because they don't have a class, that meets in a space like that, that's for creating their own games. And they were saying, why can't we get any women to join our club? And luckily, it was a big group of undergrads, and there were women who spoke up and said, you know, well, there are all these microaggressions in your lab space, and here's why I feel uncomfortable, and yada yada. So I think I'd want to jump more into that environment to learn about the logistics of it, to then see what can be shifted. But for me, students are a real resource in that endeavor, to hear what they're feeling comfortable or uncomfortable with.
Okay. Well, yeah, I would love to chat with you more about that. That's sort of a big issue we're starting to run into in Santa Cruz. So.
Definitely. Yeah.
Maybe you could talk about the safe spaces. I run into that in my classroom all the time. I'm
Sure.
constantly thinking about how to make it more safe and comfortable for everybody in terms of diversity, but I think I'm constantly failing at that too, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's some ground rules. For me, it's been a really iterative process because, again, I come from a kind of gamer community, as much as we try to stop saying the word gamer. And it comes with a lot of presumed knowledge and a lot of presumed literacy. So with my students, I've developed these guidelines that we go through at the beginning of class. So for example, we are not going to be performing our knowledge by spewing all these references to a million games. You find this often, that students who are already gamers, they want to make reference to a million things as a way to prove their legitimacy. And that really shuts down people who are new to that environment or don't share that sensibility. We have guidelines for playing together. So I like to play with students in the classroom. We play games the way you would do a film screening, because then they have to watch critically. And we have very specific rules. So everyone gets the same amount of time to play. No one is allowed to offer help unless they're asked for help. So the worst thing when you're playing with a group of people, especially as someone who's not cisgender male, is for someone to shout out, you know, oh, just jump over there, just go to the right, and it shuts down students really quickly. So it's things like that. It's guidelines that create an equal playing field in the classroom. All right, well, I look forward to talking to you more. Thanks very much.
Thank you.